All right. So the thing is, because I'm sharing my screen, I'm not going to be able to see chats or questions. So I think Megan would highlight those whenever they pop up.
Absolutely. I'll be here monitoring the chat the whole way along, everybody.
Great, thank you. So thank you so much again for having me, and I am Dr. Glenna Brewster. I am an assistant professor in the School of Nursing, and I have worked in the Integrated Memory Care Clinic as a nurse practitioner providing primary care services for persons living with cognitive impairment and dementia. So today we're going to talk a bit about sleep, and then we're going to end with some strategies and some things that you can incorporate into your daily life to hopefully improve your sleep, maintain your sleep, and enhance it if it's already great. So I have no conflicts of interest to disclose, but I have received prior funding, as was mentioned earlier, from initially I got some funding from the ADRC and then the Alzheimer's Association, the National Institute on Aging, to do my work. And some objectives here would be to, I'm going to define sleep. I'm going to talk about some changes that we observe with sleep due to age and cognitive impairment. Here I talk about identify and discuss two prevalent sleep disorders, but I made some adjustments. So we're going to, instead of speaking specifically about those two sleep disorders, I'm going to just go into some things that you can do behaviorally to improve your sleep. So in 2021, I was going through some literature, looking at the association between sleep deficiency and sleep disturbance. And I found this study that was published that said that actually, if you take 30 minutes or longer to fall asleep, or if you sleep for less than 5 hours per night, you actually have a higher risk for incident dementia. So they look at persons who are participating in this study over time and looked at dementia and all cause mortality. And they also said that the risk for all cause mortality was higher for those participants who had difficulty maintaining alertness, when they said that we had difficulty maintaining alertness some days or almost every day, napping some days or almost every day, reported poor or very poor sleep quality, and was sleeping 5 or fewer hours per night. So we see here that certain sleep behaviors actually increase our risk for dementia and may also increase our risk for mortality in the long run, which is why I think this says to us sleep is important and we need to prioritize it. So what really is sleep? It is a period of inactivity and restoration of mental and physical function. So when we are laying there asleep, our bodies and our minds are being restored. And during that time, there are alternations between non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement sleep. So different things would happen in our brains during rapid eye movement sleep and non-rapid eye movement sleep. So sleep functions to integrate new memories and existed knowledge. So what it does, during the day we have different experiences, and let's say we are trying to remember something, we meet somebody new and we want to remember their names. When we sleep, what happens is that, these new things are integrated with what we would have known before. So let's say we meet somebody whose name is John, and we usually go to church, we read the Bible, then it might say, well, John was John the Baptist. So in the future, I'm going to put these two things together to remember their names. So that's one of the way. But it also works to restore brain chemistry to a normal balance. And in terms of brain chemistry, we know about beta amyloid on top, but we know about different neurotransmitters like serotonin that helps with maintaining our mood. And so that's just one of the neurotransmitters. So it helps with, if we would have used too much during the day, then it brings it back into balance when we are sleeping. complete sleep cycle takes between 70 to 120 minutes, and we go through about 4 to 6 of those per night if we sleep the recommended duration that we are recommended to sleep. So, with non-REM and REM sleep, 80% of most of our sleep is non-REM sleep, and about 20% of our sleep is REM sleep. There are 3 stages for non-REM sleep. So we have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. During stage 1, that's when we lay down in bed or wherever we're sleeping and we feel drowsy. But if somebody comes and tries to talk to us or engage with us, we're easily aroused because we're not fully asleep, I would say, yet. Stage 2, that is like after that drowsiness stage where we between 10 to 25 minutes where we're actually asleep, and if somebody comes to try to wake us up, they need to have more intense stimuli to wake us up. And then stage 3, that is that deep sleep where we need a large stimulus to wake us up, and but during that stage also the muscles of our bodies are relaxed, our heart rate decreases, and our blood pressure and our GI activities would slow down. Then after that, we would go into REM sleep, and during REM sleep, our brain is highly active. So it's our brain is also active in non-REM sleep. But REM sleep actually looks like we're awake. So when we are looking at REM sleep activity on a polysomnography recording using, when they put sensors on our heads, and they're looking to see what our brains are doing on that EEG recording, then it looks just like we're awake. The difference is we're asleep because our muscles are paralyzed, our muscles aren't moving. During this stage, you can have vivid dreaming and loss of muscle movements, and our blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing would also increase. So we see here the stages of a normal sleep cycle. We start awake, then we go to stage 1, then stage 2, then stage 3, then come back up to stage 2, then we usually go directly into REM sleep. After REM, we come back to stage 2, then to stage 3. So we would cycle through stage 2 and stage 3 and REM unless we wake up. If we wake up, then we start back from stage 1 into 2 into 3, back to 2 and then to REM. But if we don't wake up, then we'll just cycle through 2, 3, 2, REM, 2, 3, 2, REM throughout the night. I also talked about maintaining our brain chemistry earlier, and one of the ways, or the main way that the brain does that, is using the glymphatic system. So the glymphatic system is similar to the lymphatic systems in our bodies, but the glymphatic system is that system that's around our brain, and it's made up of our arteries, our capillaries, and our veins. And we know oftentimes that there's this flow of fluid from our arteries towards our veins so that they can remove excess fluid or waste products from the brain and the body. So in this case, the glymphatic systems allows for the clearance of proteins or waste products or excess fluid that is in our brains. And what we found and what research has shown is that actually during sleep and that deep sleep, the glymphatic system is more efficient. So it showed that up to 55% more efficient during sleep. So we can know then that one of the main things that it's clearing out, or one of the things that it's clearing out, would be beta amyloid and tau that is usually built up during our brains during the day when we're awake and working and doing all the wonderful stuff we do when we're awake. But when we're asleep, then our brains is more efficient at removing all these metabolites and things that aren't good for our brains. There are also changes that occur as we age. So the recommended sleep duration for adults 18 to 64 is between 7 to 9 hours each night. And for adults 65 and older, it's 7 to 8 hours. So our minimum that we should all be trying to get to is 7 hours. But more than a third of adults actually do not get enough sleep, meaning they sleep less than 7 hours per night. With aging, though, we see that older adults tend to wake up earlier, but they also go to bed earlier in the night on average. They have earlier circadian rhythm, and that means that, for the 24-hour clock, our bodies kind of tells us what time we should be going to bed. But often with as we age, the your circadian rhythm would move back. So it's telling us to go to sleep earlier than we actually really should, in alignment with that 24-hour clock. So what that means is that our body temperature increases in the morning earlier than it should. And this clock and this rhythm is not aligned with when our melatonin and our cortisol secretion usually happens. There's also reduced sleep consolidation and stage 3 sleep. Sleep consolidation is our ability to sleep straight through the night without waking up. So as we age, there are things and factors that can increase our risk for that. So, there might be chronic conditions that might increase our risk for pain or increase our risk for having to use the nocturia, having to use the bathroom multiple times nightly. So those things would wake us up and prevent us from sleeping all the way through the night. Not that that's necessarily abnormal, but it's just that something that happens with age. And then we have less stage 3 sleep. And sometimes we can see difficulty falling and staying asleep. Now, in terms of cognitive impairment related changes, there are reasons for that. So it could be that the neurons that start and maintain sleep are damaged, that there have been changes to the circadian pacemaker of the body. So the suprachiasmatic nucleus that is found in the brain, that is what is responsible for aligning our 24-hour circadian rhythm with that 24-hour day. And if there's some changes with that, then we can see then that there'll be a misalignment of our bodies with a 24-hour day. And also, there can be changes in the brainstem regions and pathways that then would regulate the sleep wake cycle. And how do we see that manifesting? Then there might be day and night sleep pattern reversals, meaning that, if you have memory loss or cognitive changes, that you might want to be sleeping in the day and awake at night. There might also be frequent nighttime awakening, so you wake up a lot during the night or more than, previous, or increase in daytime sleepiness and napping. Many times, because the person who is living with cognitive changes and memory loss are experiencing sleep disturbances and sleep changes, we would see this affecting and the way that care partners sleep. Some of the ways that we hear care partners often report their sleep and their changes in sleep include them also waking up multiple times per night. And that could be they're waking up to check on the person who is having memory loss or cognitive changes, or it could be that the person wakes up and then they wake the care partner up. They have shorter sleep duration, and this is often because they go to bed after the person living with memory loss or cognitive changes and they wake up before them. They often take a longer time to fall asleep, and this is also because of multiple things. It could be that they're thinking about everything that happened today and thinking about everything that they need to do tomorrow, or they're worried about other life events, especially if they're working or they have other caregiving responsibilities. So, some people are sandwich caregivers, so they're taking care of their children and their family, along with supporting somebody, a loved one, a friend who is living with changes in memory and cognition. They also have inconsistent sleep wake times, so and that means they don't go to bed at the same time every night or wake up at the same time every day. They longer wake after sleep onset, so they fall asleep and then they wake up during the night and they stay awake for a longer period of time. And longer sleep onset latency, which is the same thing as taking a longer time to fall asleep. All right. So, what are some recommendations? First, exercise. That is one of the big things that we've seen that helps with maintaining or falling asleep and going asleep and staying asleep. So the general recommendation is 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise. However, that looks for you. So moderate for some people can be running 5 miles, and moderate for some people can be doing chair exercises and walking for 15 minutes twice a day, very slowly. So, however that looks for you would be moderate intensity, just trying to break a little sweat. Um, and then doing some strength training including the major muscle groups. And one study I looked at actually showed that 12 months of moderate intensity exercise, and this was done in female caregivers, they reported improved sleep quality compared to those who had received only nutrition exercise. And there's another study that we had found where caregivers also had participating in an intervention where they went walking and listening to music before bed, not within 2 hours of wanting to go to bed, and that also had improved their sleep outcomes over time. Light. So some studies that we found 2 weeks of bright compared to dim light, the caregivers didn't report any improvement in their sleep. However, when they talk about blue and white light. So blue and white light has to do with exposure to blue light tells your brain, so tells your pineal gland to not secrete melatonin. And when we're not exposed to it, then our brains know that it's okay to secrete melatonin to promote drowsiness and then sleep. So exposure to blue light, what we say is when you wake up in the morning, you pull your curtains and then you look outside, see the light. Hopefully, there is some light based on where you live. Sometimes it's not all that bright, especially, during the winter months. And during that time, then you can, have blue, white light around you, screens, those things tell your brains to be awake. And they found that 4 weeks of blue white light actually increased circadian entrainment, meaning it's telling the body once more to be aligned with this 24-hour rhythm that we have. And it increased sleep efficiency and sleep time. So when you're in bed, you're actually asleep. And this was for caregivers. And then 6 weeks for caregivers also for another study, improved sleep quality, sleep adequacy, and reduced sleep disturbances and problems. So you're exposed to it during the day, and at nighttime, what you do is that you reduce your exposure to blue and white light by, taking off the lights, turning off the screens where the blue white light are in preparation for going to bed. So the longer we're exposed to it, the more it tells our bodies that we should be awake instead of going to sleep. And one of the things I also want to point out is that the bright dim light, so it's not like you say, well, I'm going to, you have dimmers and I'm going to dim the light. It's not the dimness of the light and the brightness of the light, but the type of light that you're exposing your eyes to, so that your brain will say, I should be awake or I should be asleep. Then we have mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques. So these can be deep breathing, being within that moment and being aware of your body to do deep breathing, scanning your body to identify, maybe where areas of stress or tightness are, and then hatha yoga. And studies have shown that these three actually over time also improved qualitative sleep outcomes for caregivers. And then we have cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So this is a multi-component intervention. It includes things like stimulus control, sleep restriction or consolidation for older adults and people living with cognitive impairment, cognitive changes, memory loss. We often do sleep consolidation. Then we have relaxation training, cognitive restructuring, and sleep hygiene education. The stimulus control therapy is where we give certain instructions, including no napping during the day. So we understand that there are some people who nap, and we say if you're going to nap, make sure that it's less than 30 minutes before 3 p.m. The goal is for it to not interfere with you wanting to fall asleep and going to bed later on in the day if you're going to take a nap. We also say, you keep the bed for sleep, sickness, sex. Those are the three things that should happen in your bedroom. So one of the hardest things I think for some people, if they are accustomed to having, television in their bedrooms and doing all these other things in their bedroom, the reason that we say that is that we want your body and your mind to know that when you go into the bedroom and when you go into bed, you're going to go to sleep. And if you're doing all these other things in your bed and in your bedroom, then your brain and your body doesn't know what it is that it needs to expect when you go into the bedroom. So we say keep everything else out of the bedroom, except for those three S's. The other thing is if you're in bed and you're laying there and you're aware that you're not going to fall asleep, then you get up, you get out of bed, and you find somewhere else to go until you feel sleepy. So that could be going into your other room, reading, and they're not everybody necessarily might have that space to go into another room. So as they get out of bed, maybe there's a chair or something at your bedside or somewhere else where you can, maybe read a book or through a magazine, fold some clothes, do something else until you feel sleepy. And then when you feel sleepy, go back to bed. So you only go to bed when you feel sleepy, not that you're saying, well, it's 9 o'clock and I should be going to bed now. If you're not sleepy at 9 o'clock, then you shouldn't be going to bed. And then we have sleep consolidation. And sleep consolidation is reducing the time that you're in bed progressively to match the time that you're actually asleep. So there are many of us who would lay in bed between 9 and we go fall asleep at 11, but we go to bed at 9 and we're in bed until 11 when we're ready to go to sleep. The goal is that you're going to go to bed when you're going to sleep. So consolidation is gradually reducing that time that you're spending in bed not asleep to match the time that you're in bed actually asleep. Then relaxation training that can include things like guided progressive muscle relaxation or guided imagery or anything that you can listen to that leads your mind to be focused on something else and relaxing your bodies. And promoting relaxation during the day and before bed actually promotes falling asleep quicker. Then cognitive restructuring, that has to do with identifying thoughts that are associated with so negative sleep and unhelpful sleep thoughts that are associated then with maybe behaviors that are also not helpful. So we're identifying these unhelpful sleep thoughts and then making some changes in how we think about our sleep. So one of the examples I tend to give is, maybe you didn't sleep well tonight, and when you wake up in the morning, you're going to say, I know tomorrow is going to be a terrible day because I slept poorly last night. So it would be giving you questions then that you can ask yourself. And one of these questions would be, have I ever had a bad night of sleep that I had a good day the following day? And more than likely, the probability of that is 1, where you're going to say the probability of you having a bad night of sleep but having a good day the following day, even if it's one time that it happened, would be yes, that you've had that happen. And that's what you're going to then tell yourself, I've had bad nights before and I've had good days. So sleeping badly last night doesn't mean that I'm going to have a bad day today. And then finally, we have sleep hygiene education. So sleep hygiene are personal and environmental activities that can actually influence sleep. So when we identify these things, then we can make adjustments to them. So for the first one, maintaining a sleep schedule, including on weekends. So you determine the time that you're going to wake up, especially that wake up time, and be consistent with it, even if it's on weekends. Practicing a relaxing bedtime ritual, and that looks different for everyone. So for some people, it might be, having warm, we call everything tea, but, having warm herbal tea before bed, having milk with some crackers or something like that. That might be having a shower before going to bed. That might be listening to music, taking your bright screens off. So whatever that looks for you, making sure that it's a relaxing bedtime ritual. And if there's something that's bothering you or you're thinking about having to do today, one of the things I also suggest is maybe having a book that you can write down everything you need to process for today and all the things you need to do for tomorrow, so that you will be able to fall asleep quicker because you're not thinking about those. Sleep on a comfortable mattress and pillow. Once more, that's different for everyone. So you get to determine what's comfortable for you. Turn off electronics before going to bed. And if you can't turn them off, put them far enough away from you that when you turn over, you don't pick it up. And to the extent that you can, also reducing your exposure to that screen, so the blue white light, at least an hour or so before going to bed. And if you're going to use it outside of the bedroom before going to bed. No vigorous exercise within a few hours of bedtime. So if you exercise, is great. We encourage exercise. But if you want to do something before bedtime, we say stretching is good. So that's not going to increase your body temperature significantly, whereas vigorous exercise would increase your body temperature, and then it has to decrease it and then decrease it even further, because that's what happens a lot of times when we're going to go to bed. Our temperatures tend to fall. Limit caffeine and alcohol intake prior to bed. For caffeine, we say, try to not have after midday, and for alcohol, not within 2 hours of going to bed. So if you're having it, and also heavy meals. So if you're having alcohol with dinner and you go to bed at 10, try to have dinner and the alcohol before 8 p.m. And evaluate your bedroom looking at temperature, sound, and lighting. We encourage you to, if you want to do sound, so doing those noises where the frequency aren't changing significantly throughout the night. So that's the other thing about televisions. Many television, if you have a television with volume on, sometimes the sound is low, then sometimes it goes high based on what's playing. So, we say things like, maybe you can have a fan on, and that makes a sound that's pretty consistent in its frequency. Or you can do white or pink noise, or some noises that you like that is consistent in its frequency. And for lighting, you can use an eye mask if there's a lot of light around, and then making sure the temperature is what works for you. And leading to that, I wanted to talk about a study that I'm recruiting for. And this is using cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So those multi-components that I just spoke about. This is an 8-week study. So we met with caregivers, people living with cognitive impairment, and we added a few more sessions to tailor it to some specific things that we can talk about that has to do with cognitive changes and memory loss and caregiving. So those are integrated within the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia framework. And so it's a 6-week intervention for if a care partner and the person living with cognitive impairment both have some sleep issues, that you can participate in this intervention. You attend it together, and you go through the 6 hours together. And it's in total 10 study visits, and you wear a wristwatch to monitor your sleep, and you learn all these. You learn and you get to practice these behavioral and cognitive pieces of the intervention that I just talked about earlier. And if you are interested, you can feel free to contact me or our lab at Dr. Brewster Lab at emory.edu, and I'll share the flyer so that the group can share it with anyone who might be interested in joining us to participate in this study. And so that is kind of what I had for you today. And these are some ways that you can contact me. So I'm on Twitter at Glenna SB, and we are on Facebook at Dr. Brewster Lab. So it will say Mind at Rest Research Lab. Our website is www.mindatrest.org. and our email address. So thank you so very much. This was my presentation, and I think I see some questions, so I will stop sharing.
So we've got some really good questions in the chat that are coming from a lot of our viewers, and I want to ask a few of them. We talked a little bit about problems getting to sleep at night, but one of the questions that came up is, what about folks that are having issues staying awake after maybe an evening meal? What are your suggestions for that sort of after meal dinner time?
So one of the things I think I did mention here that we also do in that intervention is pleasant activities. So I would say finding an activity after you've had your meal that you can do that you enjoy. So if listening to music makes you fall asleep, then don't listen to music. But you can do something like, for example, crossword puzzles, or reading something, or playing a game, or looking through memorabilia or albums, or so find some activity that is pleasurable for you to do. Some people also watch TV, but if you're watching a show that's going to make you fall asleep, then I would say don't do that either. So it might be trial and error in terms of things that you are going to find and activities that you're going to do that is going to keep you awake until it's kind of time for you to start getting ready for bed. So active and activity to keep you awake after that.
Good advice, especially if something like you're saying, listening to music or reading a newspaper makes you sleepy, finding that
Right.
thing that you enjoy that's a little bit more activating than that, but not so activating as working out or getting your heart rate up. One of the other
Exactly. And
questions.
true, there you can do housework. Some people, you might have clothes to fold, you might have emails to, some people have emails to respond to, or things like that. So you can do some housework. You can also help with the dishes.
Great advice. One of the other questions that we got is, does it really matter what time a person sleeps? Is it okay for someone who does have that inverse sleep schedule to sleep during the day and be up at night? Does it affect the quality of sleep and the kind of memory consolidation that you were talking about if it's during the day versus at night?
So to an extent, yes, because so our bodies are aligned with this 24-hour rhythm. So our bodies to an extent still naturally do things the way it does. So even if we sleep more during the day, it's secreting melatonin, it's secreting cortisol. Those things to an extent will still be secreted on that 24-hour cycle. So it's like our bodies are not in alignment with necessarily how our brains would, to an extent, still be secreting these particular hormones that would promote sleep or promote wake. Napping, I say, is, napping can be beneficial for some people before, as 3 p.m. For short naps, not like if you're not like a 2 hour. That's not a 2 hour period of sleep is not a nap. But I do understand that there can be some day night reversals, but finding activities and things that the person who has memory loss or changes would want to participate in and do to keep them awake during the day to promote that sleep at night, that would be the best thing that I would suggest. It would take effort to identify the things that they can do to keep them awake. And if they do need to rest and take a nap, that's fine. But I would say to still do activities, because to an extent we can still learn, so our brains can still be conditioned to sleep at night if we stay awake during the day.
And it's one of the questions that we got was, should a care partner and a partner get a sleep study? And I love what you said about it is a great way to identify what the issues are and what the potential solutions are with support and with experts. And so if you're interested in going through that process, if you're interested in some of the sleep studies and learning more about, the consolidation therapy and the things that were kind of people were curious about in the chat. There are links to join Dr. Brewster's studies are listed in the chat. I'm also going to include them in our upcoming newsletter that is going to be sent out here at the end of the month. Believe it or not, it's almost the end of July already. And so we'll send out that flyer that she shared with us if you're curious about learning more and signing up for some of those sleep studies, especially if it's been something that you might be struggling with, whether you're someone with a diagnosis or a care partner, and you feel like you've tried all the things out to do, or you feel a little lost on where to turn to next. I really want to encourage everybody to consider signing up for the sleep studies. So we'll include that. And I just want to say again, thank you so much to the
So
contributions. Go ahead.
before you go into that, I think two things come to mind when the person asks about a sleep study. Many times when we think sleep, and I didn't touch on those two slides today, a sleep study in a sleep medicine perspective is if you have sleep issues. So, for example, you're having a hard time falling asleep, or you wake up and you might have headaches in the morning, or somebody tells you that you're snoring and you stop breathing during the night, or you have like restless legs and you want to identify whether or not something is happening with your sleep, then you would go to a sleep medicine provider who would prescribe you what we call a sleep study, so polysomnography, where you can go into a lab or they can send it to your home and they attach like electrodes to your head and your muscles of your eyes and your arms, and they look at your heart and your uh, oximetry or pulse oximetry to determine and look at your sleep in terms of sleeping with your breathing and your heart and all that stuff. So if you have any one of those symptoms, I would say speak to your healthcare provider, and then they're able to order um, or refer you to a sleep medicine provider who can then order you a sleep study to see what else is going on. In terms of our research studies, if you do have difficulty, falling asleep, staying asleep, and you're both having that, both you and your care partner, then I would say feel free to reach out to us. And you can do both. If those are there. If somebody has sleep apnea, they can still participate in my research study. So sleep apnea does not prevent them from being a participant in the study. It's just that we want both of you to be having some type of sleep issue because you're both participating in the intervention together.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. It's so helpful to hear it from the source too. And one of the things we talked about last week is, a lot of these sleep issues are very common and very normal in this population. Although they are common, they don't have to be normal. They can be something that can be addressed and treated and supplemented and supported. And so, as we work in this community to maintain what we have cognitively as long as possible, make sure that you're considering how sleep interacts with that effort and that mission that you may have in your life, because it certainly can make a huge impact. Dr. Brewster, thank you so much for encouraging us and sharing us, normalizing some of these things and taking away some of the stigma about talking about them as well.
Yes, definitely. And I always say if there's something that concerns you, as long as you have your healthcare provider, you should always ask questions about it. Feel free, definitely, to bring it up with your healthcare provider because that's what they're there for. And they can give you the answers that you might need, whether to proceed further or say, okay, this is totally fine and I can live with this, or they can deal with that.